Good morning, students. This morning, before we start the lesson on employment law, I have an important life lesson for you about leadership and trust. Now, when I went into West Point in the late 60s, the Vietnam War was going on, and we studied leadership like our lives depended upon it, because our lives did depend upon it. There was a time during the Vietnam War when the average life expectancy of a second lieutenant infantry platoon leader in the Army was about 2.5 weeks. And by the time we were juniors and seniors at West Point, the men who had been juniors and seniors when we were freshmen, plebes, they were being brought back to West Point in boxes to be buried at the West Point Cemetery. So we would go to their funerals and we would contemplate our own futures. Well, when you study leadership like that, you end up studying leadership for the rest of your life. And that's what I have done. I have spent a lifetime studying leadership. I'm not claiming to be a great leader. I'm just saying I'm a good student of it. And I think my favorite definition of leadership, until I ran into this book by Murphy and Snell, was one that was given to me by a corporate leadership trainer named Kelly Poulos. She said, a leader is someone who expresses their vision in such a way that others are enrolled in it and wish to participate in it. So for years, that was, based on my life experience, that was my ultimate definition of leadership. But what I have found is that as your life progresses and you grow and you learn, your working definition of leadership grows and changes with you. And now, any definition of leadership that I would use would be incomplete without something in it about trust. The thing that I got about trust was from reading a book by Emmett Murphy and Michael Snell, a very popular business leadership book that came out quite a few years ago now. It was called The Genius of Sitting Bull, 13 Heroic Strategies for Today's Business Leaders. And in that book, they look at the fact that Sitting Bull, who was one of the Sioux Indian chiefs that defeated General George Armstrong Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn, that was an amazing feat that he accomplished. He brought together something like 16 or 17 warring Sioux tribes who were not used to getting along at all. Usually they were fighting with each other, having wars with each other over hunting territories. And the chiefs of those different 16 or 17 tribes were all over the board with regard to whether or not they wanted to fight at all. You had some older chiefs that wanted peace at any price. They didn't want to fight the white man. And you had some crazy young chiefs like Crazy Horse that wanted to fight everybody, including the other Sioux tribes. How was one Indian leader like Sitting Bull able to pull together all of those warring, disputing Sioux tribes into a unified Sioux nation, a unified army that defeated what was at that time one of the greatest cavalry units in the world? And also, believe it or not, one of the greatest generals up to that point in his career. Custer's remembered for his idiocy and failure in the slaughter at Little Bighorn, but before that, he was one of the most successful generals in the Civil War. In fact, he was so successful in the Civil War that he was the youngest man ever to be promoted to the rank of general officer. So how did Sitting Bull pull together those Indians into different factions of disputing Indian tribes? How did he pull them together into a single unified nation and to defeat one of the greatest cavalry units in the world? Well, Emmett Murphy and Michael Snell spent a long time studying this, and they said, well, it's true that Sitting Bull was known as one of the most courageous chiefs, but what it boils down to in the end is Sitting Bull was the one guy that all the other chiefs trusted. Everyone trusted him. Trust. If you're going to be a business leader, you're going to build business teams, you're going to have employees, you're going to have to be somebody that people trust. And even if it's not your plan to be a business leader, all you want to be is a good employee, you're going to have to be someone that builds trust. But here's the quote from Murphy and Snell's book that I've used for the last 12 years now. All leaders must instill trust in their people. Without trust, commitment will die and the community will lose the constancy of purpose that strengthens the group bond. Leaders must do more than inspire their people's confidence in their leadership and vision. They must also build everyone's trust in each other and in themselves. So after reading that quote for about 12 years, I have come to realize that true mastery of leadership involves inspiring trust in 3 different ways. Certainly, as Kelly Poulos said, you must inspire people's trust in your leadership and in your vision. But you know what? In terms of what makes a great leader, I think that one's almost the no-brainer. It's almost expected. Certainly, if you don't inspire people's trust in your vision, if you don't inspire people's trust in you as a leader, you're done before you start. But that's the first level of mastery of leadership with regard to trust. The first level is getting people to trust in you as a leader and in your vision. But there are 2 other critically important levels of inspiring trust. The second one is inspiring trust between the members of your team, of the group you're working with. Human beings do not naturally get along with each other in groups. It is the nature of mammals, and humans are just other mammals. When they're in a group, they squabble with each other trying to establish a pecking order. So there's always going to be gossiping and backstabbing and arguing and bickering in any group. So within the human group, as the leader of the group, how do you get those members of that group to trust each other at least enough to say, well, the goal that we have, the mission that we have in this group is more important than whether or not we have petty differences. How do we set aside our differences and trust each other at least enough to get the job done and the mission accomplished? That is the second level of trust that you must inspire if you want to have true mastery of leadership. The third level, as they say, is getting people to trust not only each other, but to trust in themselves. Now, the last time you screwed up, or the last time you had some doubts about your ability to get something done that was important to you, who was the one person in the world that beat you up about it the worst? That's right, it was you. And so how does a master leader get people to trust in themselves enough to believe that they can get the job done? I have watched people who have true mastery of leadership walk up to a person and say, I have an important job that needs to be done. I believe that you're the one that can get the job done, and I know you can do it. Will you take it on for me and run with it? And sometimes a person who can get people to believe in themselves can get those people to perform at far higher levels and do more than the people who believe they could do themselves. So 3 levels of inspiring trust if you have true mastery of leadership. First, inspiring trust in your self as a leader and your vision, your goal. Second, inspiring enough trust within the members of the group so that they can work together and get the job done. Third, getting each individual person within the group to believe in themselves enough so that they can get their part of the job done. That is true mastery of leadership.